There was only one decisive result in Game 2 of the quarterfinals of the World Cup 2023, and it was between Russian international master Polina Shushalova. I said she was Polish in an earlier video, so sorry for that. And Nurgyul Salimova of Bulgaria, who came second in this year's Bulgarian Championship. Number 47 Salimova upset number 14 Shushalova in the first game yesterday, which was a 77 move grind, so all she needs is a draw to get to the semifinals, while Shushalova needs a win to stay alive and force tiebreaks tomorrow. The game shows an early deviation from the Vienna game, and near the beginning, Shushalova allows her bishop to be trapped, but gets sufficient compensation for the piece. So e4, e5, knight to c3 going for the Vienna game, knight to f6, and bishop to c4. And unsurprisingly, there are over 3,500 games that reach this position, and there's a lot of things that you can do as black. You can develop the knight to c6, you can develop the bishop to c5, develop the bishop to b4. You can even play knight takes e4 because after recapturing you have d5 with a better game for black. But instead of this, Salimova plays the seventh most popular move, which is c6, and there are only 47 games that reach this position. Since this is only black's third move, it looks like Salimova is trying to take Shushalova out of her prep early. So Salimova takes the opportunity to play d4, as the queen can recapture without the knight going to c6. And Salimova trades on on d4, so e takes d4, queen takes d4, and b5, threatening the bishop. So bishop goes back to b3, and Salimova prepares a push on the queen side by playing d3. Now there are 4 games that reach this position, all played by players under 2400. But bishop to g5 has never been played in this position, so on move 7 we have a new position. Now Salimova counters the pin with bishop to e7. We have queenside castle by Shushalova, and Salimova continues pushing on the queenside with c5, threatening the queen and preparing c4. So queen to d2 and c4 as planned, trapping the bishop. We have bishop exchange for knight on f6, and now Shushalova forces Salimova's hand with knight takes b5, threatening bishop takes c4 to save the bishop. However, queen to d5 is recommended with an attack on both the queenside pawns and a good centralization of the queen. So c takes the bishop, and knight takes d6 check, which was made possible by this exchange on f6 because the bishop is no longer on e7 to attack the knight. King to f8, a takes b3, bishop to e6, and f4, trying to expand on the king side and limit black's strong bishop pair. Salimova pushes her pawn to a5, a principled decision when a player is attacking in the center. It's good to counterattack on the flanks. Knight to f3, a good developing move, and now a4. And here Shushalova plays b4, but queen to b4 is a better move, attacking the a4 pawn and also threatening some discoveries with the knight on d6. But anyway, b4 was played, and Salimova develops the knight to c6, even though a3 is preferred here. Shushalova plays e5, hampering the dark square bishop, and Salimova continues pushing with a3. Now, of course, if you capture the bishop here, then a2 and the king can't get over to b1 to stop the pawn and can't move to allow the rooks to stop the pawn. So the bishop can't be captured. Shushalova plays b3, again, she doesn't capture. And now Salimova plays bishop to e7, moving the bishop away from the pawn. Here, Shushalova plays king to b1, and this is a major blunder, allowing black to gain the initiative. So Salimova reacts by exchanging in the center, bishop captures on d6, queen captures with check, queen captures, rook captures, and knight takes b4. We now have a situation where white has 6 pawns and is down a piece to black's 4 pawns. So black would be good to try and exchange as much as possible, while white needs to maintain um, the strength of the large pawn chains in the middle of the board. So knight to d4, centralizing the knight and attacking the bishop, and black just plays g6, preventing f5. We have c3, and now a2 with check. King to a1, blockading the a pawn, and the knight centralizes to d5 and threatens knight takes c3. So Shushalova defends it by pushing to c4, and we have knight to e3, an excellent square for the knight in the opponent's camp. And here white plays g3, which does strengthen the pawn chain and moves it away from being captured by the knight. Um, but a better move is to exchange. A better move is to exchange knight for bishop, and then play the rook back to play the rook back to d2 to take care of the a2 pawn. But anyway, g3 is played, and now f5. Here's Salimova, knight to f5, sorry. Here Salimova fails to grab the initiative, as Shushalova has this light square weakness on the king side, and so a better move was to move the bishop to h3 and keep it. It should be noted here that Salimova is in time trouble with less than 3 minutes on the clock, while Shushalova still has 20 minutes, and this is only move 26, so 14 more moves have to be played to reach time control. So there's an exchange, knight takes e6, f takes e6, rook to d7. Here rook to d2 was better, taking care of the a pawn, and now king to e8, threatening the rook. And the rook goes to b7, even though again rook to d2 was better. But Salimova fails to take advantage with either knight to d4 or knight to e3, which would allow a check on knight to c2. A check on knight to c2, forcing the king to move and being able to promote the pawn. Instead, she plays rook to g8, preparing g5 to break the kingside pawn chain. And Shushalova plays king to b2. Much better is rook to d1, taking over the open file. And now rook to g7, and we have an exchange of rooks. So rook captures on g7, and knight captures on g7. And g4. White starts to push on the king side and counters the knight's ability to jump to either f5 or h5. Salimova counters with h5. We have h3 and king to e7. Here Salimova has a win by trading the a pawn and then trading the h pawn and then moving knight to h5, threatening the threatening the f pawn and looking to make um, and looking to gobble up all the pawns while the king is way over on the king side. But okay, instead we have king to e7, rook to a1, blockading the pawn and looking to get rid of it once and for all. Rook to f8, trying to make some headway on the king side. And here the a pawn is exchanged for the f pawn with rook takes a2 and rook takes f4. We have rook to a7 check and king to f8 saving the knight. And c5. Now Shushalova begins the queenside march. Knight to e8, remaneuvering the knight to a better square, and king to c3. And now Salimova goes for the trade on the queen side. So h takes g4, h takes g4, and rook takes g4. And now black has a passed pawn on the queen side, and Shushalova is only one pawn up while being a piece down. But she has two connected passed pawns on the queen side, which is compensation, and she will try to push these pawns to victory. So b4, rook to g1, trying to get the rook behind the king and the passed pawns. b5, and g5. Black starts pushing her own pawn, even though rook to c1 is better, putting the rook behind the king and passed pawns before pushing the g pawn. So b6, g4, both players continue pushing their pawns, and rook to a2. Shushalova wants to put the rook behind the passed pawns, but king to c2 would have prevented the black rook from making trouble behind the passed pawns. Now rook to c1, king to b4. The king heads to commandeer the pawns while black continues to push the g pawn on g4. So king to bishop 5, or sorry, king to b5, rook to b1 check, king to c6, king to e7, b7, rook to b4, rook to g2, taking care of the black pawn just in case. Black plays knight to g7, but the rest is simply technique. We have rook takes g3, knight to f5, rook to d3, king to e8, king to c7, knight to e7, rook to d8 check, king to f7, rook to d7, king to e8, and now rook takes e7, check, trading the knight for the rook because the passed pawns are too strong for the rook. King takes e7, c6, and black resigns, because once the b pawn promotes, black will have to give up the rook and then the c pawn queens. So yeah, a pretty good, pretty interesting battle. Shushalova came back to beat Salimova as she needed to force tie breaks, and we will see what happens tomorrow in this battle.